Today, open source is everywhere. In fact, more than 90% of modern applications contain open source, and in many organizations, it makes up more than 70% of the code. Developers love open source because it's freely downloadable, flexible, and easy to use. But the more they bring into their applications, the more complicated it gets to keep track of everything and ensure it's secure and up to date. Staying on top of open source is hard. Development teams get bogged down in time-consuming issues which take away from crucial development efforts. Inconsistent answers about open source security, licensing, and maintenance leads to both development slowdowns and increased organizational risks. So how do the largest tech companies manage their open source? Rather than having each development team choose and maintain packages individually, they create a paved path for developers, a list of pre-vetted and approved packages and package releases. Developers can move fast by pulling packages from this pre-approved list and use them without fear of deployment blockers late in the game. Meanwhile, keeping these packages updated and addressing vulnerabilities and licensing concerns is done centrally for the entire organization at once, eliminating duplicate work across the organization. This approach can be costly and time-consuming. That's where Tidelift comes in. Tidelift helps organizations move fast by eliminating the obstacles that slow down development and stay safe by identifying and removing security, maintenance, and licensing-related risks. Tidelift provides a better way to manage open source with tools, data, and strategies that drive an inclusive, organization-wide approach to improving the health and security of the open source powering your applications. We also partner with a growing network of open source maintainers. Tidelift pays the maintainers to ensure the open source software your organization relies on meets enterprise standards now and into the future. Let's take a look under the hood. The Tidelift Subscription helps you continuously improve your process for managing open source. It starts with getting a clear understanding and visibility into the open source being used today. You could try to create inventory on your own, but it's so much easier to keep up to date with the Tidelift Subscription. Here's an example. Using the Tidelift Subscription, you can generate a software bill of materials for each application. This bill of materials lists all of the open source components being used, along with the metadata such as the package's license. No more need to document license information by hand. We keep track of changes to your bill of materials by integrating into your CI/CD pipeline. Once you have an up-to-date inventory of components you're using, you can begin to develop a consistent process for managing open source, including creating your own list of pre-vetted and approved open source components for use by your development teams, also known as your custom catalog. You can also select the security, maintenance, and licensing standards and policies that make the most sense for your organization. It's easy for developers to see which of the components they use are approved and which are not, from the command line or from the Tidelift web interface. If developers need to request a package that isn't included in the custom catalog, they can do so easily. Your organization can make smart decisions about which packages and release versions to approve by reviewing security, maintenance, and license information provided by Tidelift and our partnered maintainers. Your custom catalog can be integrated into your CI/CD pipeline, so only approved components make it into your production. If a build fails, developers get guidance on what release to use instead, or ask for a package review. We also provide integrations with artifact managers, in case your development lifecycle includes the use of such tools. Instead of spending millions developing a custom process for managing open source, Tidelift provides you with the centralized open source management solution that you need, at a fraction of the cost. With the Tidelift Subscription in place, you can ensure that your development team takes full advantage of the potential of open source, removing obstacles that slow down development while improving the health and security of your organization's applications at the same time.